Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Ed's Auto Garage. This, again, is Ed Arango coming to you from my garage here in Huntington Beach, California. And again, the Ed's Auto Garage podcast is a real casual conversation amongst friends. We're sitting in the garage. We're talking cars. We're talking life. We're talking work. And today I have a special guest, Lance Dong. Lance is in charge of the San Diego chapter of the Alfa Romeo Club, and also has an affiliation with the national club. And I'll let him explain that, here shortly. So thank you, Lance, for jumping on here and welcome.
My pleasure, Ed. This is a first for me. I listen to a lot of podcasts, never been on one before. So thanks for inviting me.
Sure. Great. Yeah, no. And it's kind of just, you and I will just be sitting here kind of chit chatting a little bit. So let's start, Lance, if you don't mind, let's start with a little bit of background on you, how you came to become so enamored with Alfa Romeo cars versus being enamored with Pontiac Aztecs.
Okay. I always like to say, actually, it goes way back before even my involvement with Alfas. I've just been a car guy as long as I can remember. And I'm pretty sure it's the old inherited the car gene from my father. As I was growing up, I was the baby in my family. My two older brothers were significantly older than I was, so I always said I was an only child with two older brothers. But as I became older and got into, I guess, conversations with my dad, it was almost always around cars. And then as I thought back at it over the years, all the cars that my dad had were not your typical cars. I mean, he had Buicks, but not the usual Buicks. He had, I think my earliest memory was when he came back from some postgraduate surgical work. He was a doctor in Central California. He had gone over to Germany and brought back a 1957 356A Porsche.
Wow,
one
nice.
of the first in California, as far as I know. And then in '63, he went back and brought another one back. And then I found out later on, the first one he got because the Porsche had a back seat in it, which was just big enough for a small child. He had actually been considering the Mercedes 300 SL, which he really liked. But my mom said no, because it didn't have a back seat. So we wound up with a Porsche instead. So I grew up with a Porsche, and I learned how to drive on that car. I didn't take my first driving license in that car, but that was my car when I became a senior in high school, and I drove that car probably until mid '70s, and it kind of got wrecked, but it wasn't my fault. At any rate, I've had a love affair with cars, and then in 1987, when I was living here in San Diego after the Navy, I saw a 1982 Alfa GTV6, and I just fell in love with that car. I've always liked V6s for whatever reason, and it just appealed to me. And after we bought the car, I started looking into the history of it, and that there was a club. And the more I looked into the history, the more I became in love with the marque as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Just from the early days of Alphas and the technology that they put into their race cars in the 20s and 30s was
Right.
so far ahead of anything else. And then, looking at what they'd done with superchargers and multi-valve engines, I just became more and more involved with Alphas. And ever since '87, I've never been without an Alpha.
How nice. How nice. Is this is the Alpha you currently have the that original Alpha that you bought?
It is not. It's actually the second GTV6 I've owned.
Mm-hmm.
The first one met a demise from the standpoint that I'd had a couple of front end accidents with it, but then
Mm.
I had taken it to my mechanic while I was on vacation. I took it to him before I took a vacation. Um, and when I came back, he had admitted that he had parked it um, in error. He had parked it underneath a 57 or 58 Giulietta that had developed a leak in the brake system and leaked brake fluid uh, onto the paint in my car.
Ah, yikes.
He admitted it, and he said, "Well, I have this um, 82 Boloco that he had taken in, and that owner was unable to pay for the repair, and the engine was basically bad on it." He said, "Well, for a small amount of money, he'd take the engine out of my car, out of my old car, and put it into this Boloco that was number 110 of 350 of the Polocos." I said, "I'll do it. I'll take it." And that was in 1995. And I've had that car ever since. I've had several other Alphas in between, but uh, that's the one I've always said I will never sell. I'll,
So
if it falls apart around me, then I'll probably just be buried in it.
so this one others have come and gone, but this one has always stayed.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So take us back a little bit on your personal development. You mentioned that you were in the Navy for a period of time.
Yes, I was in college in Pennsylvania. Really didn't know what I was going to do with a degree in psychology and sociology. And uh, in my beginning of my senior year, we got postcards from the Navy recruiters. Said, "How would you like to learn how to fly and get 30 days paid vacation?" I said, "Well, why not? Let's see what we can do." Uh, I ended up not going aviation, but I served 4 years on a guided missile destroyer. Fortunately, here in California, spent two Westpacks on that ship, and then I probably would have stayed in, but not in the naval, as we say, forces afloat on
Mm-hmm.
a ship. Um, but the community that I wanted to get into was a relatively small community, and they said, "No, we'd have to send you back to sea for another 18 months." And I said, um, after spending uh, probably 7 months at sea at that time, I said, "Nah, I'll just put my letter in and
Hmm.
see what I can do on the outside." But I enjoyed the time. I learned a lot, got to see a lot of the world that I probably would never have been able to see on my own at the time. I mean, I was in my late 20s,
Right.
so we got to go to Taiwan and Hong Kong and um, some areas that I wouldn't have been able to see and probably wouldn't want to go back to, but like um, I don't know, Pakistan. It's fairly exotic, but there really isn't anything there that interests me. But I got to see it, and
Yeah.
then we got to see Bahrain um, in the UAE for all of 6 hours.
So these are places that you definitely would not have put on your vacation list, but you got to see them anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Good, and thank you for your service, and we appreciate all that, of course. Um, so so I guess one of the things that myself as an Alpha owner, and I kind of know what it's like to own an Alpha, and I always try to ask other Alpha owners to kind of try and give me a little bit of an explanation of how can you explain to someone that's not an Alpha owner what it's like to own an Alpha, because it is different. It is different from owning a Honda Civic. It is different. I mean, you could okay, so your GTV6 is probably no bigger and no roomier than maybe a Honda Civic or a 3 Series BMW, but there's something lacking there. Have
Yeah,
you been able to pinpoint it?
um, I haven't really pinpointed it per se, but I think it's just something visceral about it. Um, the sound and the feel of the car as you're driving it. I mean, I've had a lot of different cars. I had a Corvette when I was in the Navy. Um, I sold the Corvette and bought a Porsche 914-6, which I enjoyed. Um, I've also had an Acura, and so they're nice driving cars,
Right.
but it was just something about driving the that um, first Alpha that was so comfortable, and the sound was different. I mean, just the sound of the engine. Um, it wasn't overly loud, but it wasn't so muffled you couldn't hear it either.
Right.
Um, you can easily drive it around town, and then on a weekend take off for the canyons and have a lot of fun. And you have the feeling of control. You know that when you're coming into that tight left-hander, you can make it and keep some speed up so that you're not taxing the car and making it do something that it wasn't intended to do. I mean, these are drivers' cars.
Right.
You control it. Um, my wife doesn't like it because there's no power steering,
Uh-huh.
um, and she understands that that's the way the car is. Um, we went on our first date in this car. We drove up to LA for a concert, and came back, and she was driving a early '90s Camaro at the time. Uh, so she was into cars, but not the same as I was. But she also didn't reject it because it was a foreign car.
Mm-hmm.
And and then when we decided to get married, we had our engagement pictures taken in the Alpha Spider that I had at the time. And when she said, "Oh, well, let's have our picture taken in the Spider," I said, "This is a gal that I can keep." And we've been we've been married almost 22 years now, and it's she has become ingrained in the Alpha lifestyle as well. So it's just, I don't know, it's something intangible about the cars, um, but also the community that is around the cars itself. There's a wide range of people that are attracted to the cars, but we all have that one thing in common, and it's just um, it's hard to explain. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of the times we say in the community, we say come for the cars, but stay for the people, because it's really about uh, the owners that keep you coming back.
So, I mean, I notice, I mean, in conversation with other Alpha owners, um, when you get into the Alpha brand and the car, and even the older ones that are a lot more uh, um, analog per se than some of the newer ones, when you start getting into like the 80s and later 80s and 90s, they start getting a little bit more electronic gizmos and stuff inside them, right? But the older ones that are so much more analogy, um I mean, you do feel it. You do feel the car, and to what you said about the sound not being too loud, but the sound being just just right to make you feel it's part of the whole senses, the smell, the sound, what it feels like in your butt when you're sitting and driving the car, how it handles. I'll tell you, my 71 behind me, Spider, um that car does not have a single rattle in it. Like you go over a bump or anything, you don't hear like, you don't hear anything weird like that in the car.
Right,
And I
right.
and I remember test driving the car, and Yvette, my wife, was with me, and the minute we went over like a bump and she's in the car with me, we both looked at each other like, I didn't hear anything. Did you hear anything? No, I didn't hear anything. So I mean, a lot, all of that kind of comes to play. And then you talk to other alpha owners that I've experienced, that you'll say, well, you want to do some sort of upgrade or some sort of modification. Oh, typically people, well, I'm going to change the rims and put other tires on the car and things like that. Well, I want to go to, because these come with 14-inch rims. I want to go to a 15-inch rim and maybe a little bit lower profile tire. Then people are like, no, don't do it, don't do it. And the reason is that they'll tell you don't do it because you're going to lose the feel of the car. And I think there's something to be said to that. My mechanics have told me, don't do it. Leave it like it is. The car's right, just like it is.
Yeah, I agree. Um, there's a lot of that in I think in the younger and newer owners.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to personalize it, which is fine. I mean, I I can relate to that to some extent, but then I think that from my experience, you begin to realize that the engineers who designed the cars really had it right. Um, and then you can change things and you can make them the way you want it. And then you realize this is not quite what I had thought. And maybe you go back to the original setup. It's like, okay, that's the way that I really wanted it to be. But
Right.
you really don't know that until you change something. And now you want to change it back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. So it's one of those things you kind of like, oh, well, the car is good. I mean, maybe I might buy the same size tires, but maybe a better brand of tires. Maybe, not, maybe I'll put some Pirellis on it, or some, nice Michelins on the car, instead of, some, Pep Boy tires. Nothing against Pep Boy, but
Right.
you know what I mean. But you know what I'm trying to say. I mean, just a little bit
Yeah.
higher quality of a road tire on it. So, but not change the dimensions and the size and the width and the walls and things like that on
Yeah.
the.
I think when people ask me about um, doing things like that, my first question is, well, how do you want to use the car? I mean,
Yeah.
there are a lot of things that you can change on it if you want to do something special with it. I mean, there are a lot of people who are um, getting into spiders or getting into GTVs, um, and they want to take it out on the track. Well, that's a completely different use case, if you will, from enjoying it for a weekend drive. Then I'll say, well, if you want to do that, you might want to look at doing these things, which is going to change your driving dynamics when you're driving it on the street.
Mm-hmm.
You'll notice it's going to be a little stiffer, or you won't have the same feel unless you're driving at 7 to 8 tenths on the track. Then you'll be able to really realize that. So I mean, and I found that my friends who are doing that, like there are a lot of people in the LA chapter that go out regularly with the track guys. They'll have 2 or 3 sets of tires and wheels
Mm-hmm.
because
Right.
they'll go out to the track, change their tires and wheels so that they'll be able to maximize the amount of time on the track, and then they'll still be able to drive their spider on the street if they want to. So it really depends on how you want to use your car. If you want to use it as a daily driver, you probably don't need to do anything other than maybe upgrade your tires
Right,
from
right.
something that is too soft or too hard. Uh,
Yeah. So let me take a quick break here, and let's give a little shout out to the show's sponsors. And today's show is brought to you by Newport Beach Insurance Center. Newport Beach Insurance Center is a full service insurance brokerage that specializes in providing insurance to the automotive industry, from your average grocery getter to classic collector cars, to insuring automotive OEM repair shops, restoration shops, automotive component manufacturers, and even dealerships. We write coverages with many of the top carriers, and we can customize a policy to fit your needs. Check us out, Newport Beach Insurance Center, at www.npbic.com. Again, www.npbic.com, or call us at 949-358-7990. Also sponsored by Capta IMS, your no-nonsense insurance management software and CRM. Capta IMS is for the independent insurance broker to medium-sized agency. Capta IMS is built by insurance professionals for insurance professionals. Visit our site at captaims.com. That's CAPTAIMS.com for more details. And we'll include all this information in our show notes as we move on. So thanks, Lance, for sitting through that. And so we see the picture of the car behind you. This is the car you bought in, what year was that? You said 87?
well, no, this car I got in 1995.
Oh, 95. Okay.
Right. The first Alfa I bought was in 87,
Gotcha.
which was a silver gray. This one is red. Um, the Bolocco is a rather special, I guess, edition. Alfa tended to make one model each model year in a special model. They designated them as special models.
Oh, I didn't
And
realize they did that every year as they were bringing out the GTVs, sixes.
yeah, the well, in 81 and most of 82, all of the GTV6s were silver gray with blue interiors. Late in the model year, they came out with these, which are red with a black interior. This one is missing a belt line stripe, which is it's supposed to have on it, but I haven't put it back on. When I got the car, it had been prepped for paint, so they had taken the stripe off already.
Okay.
Eventually, I would like to put it back on. But in 1982, they only made 350 of the Boloccos. Now, the Bolocco is named after the test track in Italy that Alfa uses to test all of their vehicles. They still use it to test their street cars, and to a certain extent, they race. They have their race cars tested there as well.
Okay.
In 84 or 85, they came out with another special model called the Maratona, which had a much more aggressive body kit. It had a rear spoiler, a much lower, wider front spoiler, all gray. They have a lot of body kits that represent that same type of thing. Most of the GTV6 owners don't bother with that, though. I mean, they just accept the cars the way they are, repaint them really to make them look nice. But there really isn't a whole lot that you need to do to make the car any more special than it is.
Right. And these cars have, that beautiful sounding Busso engine
Right.
that do you know from what year to what year did they have did they use the Busso 6-cylinder?
Yes. Well, the the six cylinder was actually developed in the late 70s, um, and was introduced in Europe in a sedan, the Alpha
Mm,
6.
mm,
Um, it was in 81 when they brought the GTV6 out, which is an evolution from the late 70s. The Alfetta, the
right.
Alfetta sedan was built in 75, I believe, through 79. Uh, in 77, they came out with the coupe, the two-door coupe, which was uh, with the same 2-liter four-cylinder engine. And then in 81, they transitioned to the Busso V6. And they had that engine all the way up through, um, I think the late 90s. Although they left the US in 95, they continued to put the same engine into their European cars well into the early 2000s. Um, we never saw any of those cars. So
Mm-hmm.
the Milanos and the 164s of the early 90s were the last cars that we saw here with that beautiful V6. I mean, everybody that hears them just recognizes the engine immediately as one of the best sounding engines around.
And it is, and it definitely is. It's funny. The Alfetta was basically the same body style as what you have, and they still called it Alfetta, meaning little alpha. But when they went to the V6 in it, they changed it and called it Alfa Romeo, not an Alfetta GTV6. Or was it? It wasn't called an Alfetta GTV6, was it?
Um, I've seen it referred to in European literature as an Alfetta,
Oh,
but
okay.
here in the US, it was just GTV6 was all it
Yeah.
was called. Um, I think that was just a matter of American marketing.
Yeah.
Decided that's what they wanted to name it. Um, and it's the same thing with the later models. In '87, they discontinued the GTV6 and brought out what they call here is the Milano, which is a sedan body on the same chassis. But in Europe, um, they they just called it the Alpha 75.
Right.
Um, Almost exactly the same car, different designations.
Yeah. And I mean, you kind of alluded to it. I mean, in the US during that period of time, I think the only real cars we were getting were still the Spider and maybe the GTV6, and then maybe still the Spider, and then the Milano came. But in Europe, they had a plethora of different alphas that they were building.
Oh yeah, yeah. You're right.
We got the crap, not the crap, but we got a small sample.
Yes, and I think that goes way back. I don't know why or when the decision was made, but yeah, in the U.S. we only got two models.
Yeah.
I From the late '60s, I think it was only one one sedan, the Giulia sedan, and then the Alfetta sedan and the Spider, and then in the '80s it was the Spider and the GTV6, and then they came out with the Milano and the Spider, and then it was the 164 and the Spider, and then they went away and we didn't get anything. But in the meantime, they had 4 or 5 different models they sold everywhere else,
Right.
um, plus the Alpha Sud, which we never got here, which I've just come to realize was one of their technologically advanced cars that they sold everywhere except here.
What do you know much about what the Alpha Sud was? I've heard of it, and I mean I know that it has a resemblance to the GTV6 body. I've seen the dash; it has the tack in the middle, and it doesn't, and instead of the the gauges like in your car, but outside of, and then it had a 4-cylinder
Right.
turbo, right?
They
Delta something.
Yeah, late in its production, they came out with a coupe, a two-door. It was primarily a well, I just saw a YouTube video that came out of I think it was out of the UK. He did a really good history of the Alfa Sud, but it was primarily at the behest, if you will, of the Italian government, that they needed to boost the economy of southern Italy. So they
Oh,
decided,
Sud South.
right,
Oh,
right,
okay. Alpha
they
South, because they had two plants.
right, they had a plant in Alfa had a plant in Milano or Milan that produced most of the cars, but they had that plant in near Naples. And so the Italian government, who owned a substantial part of Alfa at the time, decided they needed to boost the economy. So they directed them to develop a new model and build it in that plant. Um, but I, Italy in the 70s was highly politicized and fairly socialistic, I guess. Um, so a lot of the worker unrest, as I understand it, took a big toll on the production of the Alfa Sud. So they had a lot of problems with quality in build. That along with the fact that at the time the Italian government and Fiat had gone into a business relationship with the Russians, and as part of the deal, they had to buy um, Russian steel. So a lot of the cars that were being built in Italy, from Ferraris down to the least expensive Fiats, were made out of really crappy Russian steel. So a lot of the problems that could be laid at the foot of rust in Alfas and Fiats and Ferraris and Lancias at the time um, stemmed from that, not really poor workmanship, um,
Mm-hmm.
um, but just bad steel. I've heard a lot of stories and seen cars that were otherwise very nice cars, but they developed cancer right in the middle of right in the middle of the door, where
Normally
you
wouldn't
wouldn't
happen.
you normally wouldn't know that rust would film there or would form there. It just
Right.
happened.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a shame because to the layman that doesn't know the product and doesn't know the car, the first mindset is oh, Alpha, ooh, you stay away from that. That's kind of like, oh, they're gonna have. I'll tell you, the Alphas I've owned, I have not had problems with them at all mechanically, in a sense, as long as you do your due diligence and take care of them and look after them and make sure things are changed, and you do your oil change every 3,000 miles, and you just look over the car. It's not a again not it's not a Honda Civic you put gas in and go, but if you take care of the car, it'll reward you back, tenfold in feel and in just the experience of having the car. It really does. Um,
Yeah,
so
I can't count the number of times I've had to basically say the same thing when people said, expressed the same um, the same thoughts about alphas. They relate them to Fiats, and fix it again, Tony, and why does it leak so much oil and all that. And I said, well, that's that's not the case if you really take care of your car. And I
right.
use the same analogy. It's not a Honda, but in the same light, if you just pay attention to your maintenance schedules, change the oil regularly, um, change the things that you're told you need to pay attention to, like your timing belts and things like that, it'll last you um, virtually forever. You know, I there are cars that I know of, some GTV6s that have lived in relatively hostile conditions that have gone well over 400,000 miles.
Hmm.
I mean, there's one Alpha member that I know that lives in Texas, and he regular, regularly commuted all around Texas in his GTV6, and he used to drive it to conventions all over the U.S. And at one time, I think he consecutive, consecutively won um, the prize for the highest mileage car driven to a convention.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's the same thing. I mean, just keep up on the maintenance, and it will take care of you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and yeah, that's an important thing with these cars. Just, and the cars, I mean, I don't want to call them that they're delicate, but I don't know. I've had muscle cars. I've had 70 Stingray Corvettes. Um, I've had Porsches. Um, but at least driving the Spiders, because I've only owned Alpha Spiders, but and driving the Spider, I mean, the shifting is delicate. It's just, move it, you can do it with, just your finger. You can, it's very delicate when you do it. To me, I mean, I'm not sitting there going, and running through the gears real fast, like if I was driving a big old 454 or something like that, again, and it all becomes kind of visceral, you become one with the car and the feel and the shifting and the downshifting, and I'll tell you, you know, the car feels, again, I don't, the car, my car is not, you know, in consideration to standard cars now, they're not fast cars. They're not fast cars. I'm not going to get a ticket for taking off the line real fast or anything like that. I kind of see them as momentum cars. Once you get them going, they're going, and if you get them on the twisties, they do really well and they handle. And it seems the gearing, if you're in a hill or driving a path, a canyon, the gearing seems to be just in the right place for going between third to second and then going from second back to third, and then the next turn comes, I go back down to second. That comfort of just, you know where in other cars I've had, muscle cars, I'm like, okay, I should be in third. No, sometimes you kind of get a little lost, and it seems to come a lot more natural in the Alpha in driving in a canyon. Wouldn't
Yeah,
you agree?
I absolutely agree. And um, one of the reasons that I became so enamored with the V6 or with the GTV6 was the way that it was designed, and its suspension setup is like no other coupe of its time frame, because of they reached back into their history. They used a De Dion rear end, which is not like anything else that virtually any other sports car builder is using. And it's a 50-50 weight distribution in a coupe. Um, they have inboard brakes, so your unsprung weight is different. Um, the battery is in the rear. Um, when you have two passengers in the car, it handles very neutrally. I mean, and and then the fact that it's an overhead um, cam engine, it really likes to live at 3,000 to 4,000 up to redline.
Yep.
And that's where the engine likes to run. And if you're running in the canyons, you can you can keep your revs up and exit the corner on the cam rather than having to downshift and bring it up and then quickly shift into third or fourth to be able to make the next straight. You're already up on the revs and you're just going,
Right.
and it just feels so natural.
It does. And you know, to let everybody else out there know, I mean, it is something you need to experience it. You need to drive one. You need to I think that everybody at one time in their life should own have access to an Alpha and enjoy it and drive it. That's it is a if you like driving, I'm not saying get on the 405 freeway and do the traffic in the morning. I don't mean that kind of driving. I mean, take it out on an early Saturday morning or an early Sunday morning where it's all quiet and nobody's around and you can kind of rip through a canyon or something like that. This is a car to do it in. I mean, these are
Absolutely.
cars to do it in. Go to your favorite spot, go get a cup of coffee and then go take off and go do a drive or, I try to do that. It lets me, open up my head and think and just relax and I relax. It's a relaxing experience for me. So yeah, I think that if anything, if there's any takeaways here for everybody is get one, even if you don't know which one to get or whatever, you can contact me. You can contact Lance, and I'm sure he would kind of guide you in the right direction. I mean, I know Lance is always on Bring a Trailer, so and we are too. I mean, so if you ever have any questions, or whatever, you can look at Bring a Trailer. It's a website out there. So shout out to Bring a Trailer. And also, if you're in the I'm in the Orange County area. Um, Stewart at APC Alpha Performance Center, I think it's called. Great guy, very informative, knows a ton about these cars. He is second generation, working on these cars. So a good shout out to Stewart and his shop here in Orange. And, I was just with him a couple days ago hanging out and he's super busy. Boy, he's got tons of stuff going on over there. And what's happening is that there's a lot of, well, as you know, the value of your GTV6 is going ching, 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 ching. All of them, the spiders are starting to go up. The older spiders particularly are starting to go up. And, we can't say anything about the GTVs, and the juniors and all of those guys are already, step noses and what have you. Those guys are, you can find them in the 6-figure range easily.
Easily, yeah.
Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, but there's still, there is still, cars that you could have for under 10 grand that you can find, spiders and what have you. And they're still out there. You just got to do a little bit of your homework.
Yeah, and there are a lot of good um, late model and or from the 70s on. I mean, they produced literally millions of the spiders,
Yeah.
and you can get one relatively inexpensively. Um, I'm I'm sure there are very good cars out there for less than $10,000
Sure.
that are very drivable, very serviceable, and I found that even the newer younger crowd that are just finding the Alpha Mark now, that are buying the Julias,
Right.
they're I think some of them bought them because they look cool and they've heard a lot about them, but as soon as they start driving in them, they begin to understand. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, there's a group of SoCal Alfa Romeos. They're an Instagram-based group, and they're mostly in Orange County and LA.
Yep.
But they had a drive that they came down to San Diego. So there was one guy who drove from Santa Barbara to get to Encinitas by 8 o'clock. He had to leave Santa Barbara about 5, but he came down for the drive. They drove from the beach all the way to Julian, which is about a an hour drive if you're taking it easy. Um, but they all came. There were 30 cars that came down um, just to do the drive. So
Wow.
they drove down from LA and surrounds, came down to San Diego to drive on the roads, and then they had to go home. So it was just enjoyment of the drive. And that's I thought that was very encouraging. And it's what
I saw that too. I saw that on the internet as well. I was like, wow, that was blown away.
Yeah, and they're all enjoying their cars. I mean, they just love the way they handle, the way they drive, um, and the way they look.
Yeah.
A lot of them buy it because they think it's cool, which it is, and then they realize, hey, this is a really nice car.
And they are. I mean, they are. They are a sexy looking car. The new Julias are very sexy looking cars. You know,
And they
everybody has a BMW. Kind of fits in that world. Everybody kind of has a BMW. This is a little different, and it's a great car.
It is. It's a very good car. I'm I'm waiting at this point. I want to get one. I want to get a new one,
Mm-hmm.
probably for my wife. I mean, I just she needs a new car. So at some point, um, in the next 6 to 9 months, I guess we'll see what's going to come on the market.
Yeah, that's good. So, Lance, tell us a little bit about your involvement with the club down in San Diego, the Alfa Romeo Club. Is that just how it's called?
It's the Alfa Romeo Owners Club of San Diego.
Okay.
Um, uh, it's a chapter of the national organization. Um, we have the national has chapters all over, literally all over the U.S. From Maine, the what's normally called A1 or the Alpha Owners of the Northeast, um, down the East Coast, um, through Florida and Texas and um, Northwest, all the way down to San Diego. San Diego has about 80 plus members now. At one time, when I joined in the late 80s, we had almost 250, 300 members. We were a jumbo chapter. But we're just Alpha owners that love the cars. We like socializing. Each chapter pretty much has their own characteristics. I know that the LA chapter or Alfa Romeo owners of SoCal, um, they have two groups. One which are track people. They love going out to Willow Springs and Button Willow and going as fast as they can. They also have high performance driving schools. They try to teach people, how your car will handle in an emergency situation. Uh, Even if you don't want to drive your car on a track, you can you can go out onto the track under a supervised conditions and know how your car is going to handle if somebody, all of a sudden pulls out in front of you and you're doing 45, 50 miles an hour. What do you do? And you can practice that and then know what you need to do when you're on the freeway. At any rate, San Diego is more of a social club. We like to go out on drives. We like to support each other. Last weekend, we had a member whose 70 Spider needed brakes. Um, so we had a tech session. We were over at one of the other members' house. We had jacked the car up, and we we did a brake session. We had completely redid his front brakes, and then I think they were going to do the rears on a different day, but we we did the work, and then we sat around and had hamburgers and brats, and just talked about cars. Um, I'm also on the national board of directors, and I'm uh, I guess my responsibility is managing the technology aspects of the club, since everything is really now web-based. We have a website, uh, which is aroc-usa.org. We also have a Facebook group, um, which we just got. We have about 8,000 members there. Not all of them are members of the official members of the club, but they are Alpha owners who are mostly newer Julia owners and 4C owners. So we looked at it as an opportunity to reach out to these newer owners and I guess teach them about the history of the cars and why we as older owners love the cars and hopefully uh, transmit to that transmit that love to the newer ones too, um, and also allow them uh, to communicate with others for mutual support. We're getting a lot of discussion on the groups. Um, uh, some some owners are living in areas where they have a dealer or they've gotten the car from a dealer that's maybe 100 miles away, and they have a question about something on their car. Well, they just log into the Facebook group and post the question, and somebody is bound to be able to answer it for them, or give them a pointer as to where they can get it worked on and not have to take it to a dealer. We also have Instagram and to a lesser extent we have a Twitter presence also, but that's mostly just for some broadcast messages and things like that. The national, we try to have larger um, gatherings that will appeal to a lot of people. We have a national convention every year, which goes from East Coast to Mid to West Coast. Um, this year's convention is going to be in Colorado Springs, which is going to be pretty interesting to be able to experience the roads in Colorado. One of the events is they have a special time that we'll be able to drive up Pikes Peak, just the Alpha Club. So we'll be able to experience that on our own. Um, there's also the advantage of having the organization and have ties with the Alfa Romeo Formula One team. So in past years at Circuit of the Americas, when the F1 races have come there, we've had a full tour group um, that has access to hospitality. We've had paddock walks of the open paddocks when they've been allowed us to go there. Special receptions where we meet luminaries in the Alpha world
Mhm.
and other Formula One people that have been associated with Formula One. So it's a lot of fun.
So Lance, tell us about you said the involvement with the F1 and walking the paddocks. I mean, so is this you have to be kind of you have to be a member of the national club, I would assume, and you have some sort of credential to show that you are part of this organization?
Well, the National has organized a trip um, through a gentleman by the name of Steve Austin, who does a lot of travel events and car related events. Steve has organized this as a specific function for the group. There's you sign up, you pay your fees, you get hotel room, you get access to transportation from the hotel and the dinners and various receptions. So you would be in the group that goes through the paddock as the Alpha owners. Um, you would still, well, tickets I think are included in the fees that you pay.
Hmm.
So you sit in your seat, watch the race. As a group, you can go to the receptions and go through the paddock.
Interesting. And and to be, if you're an alpha owner and you want to join the club, I mean, what is it usually, and how does it work? Do you join the national club and then you join the smaller like San Diego club or the LA club, or how does that work?
Yes. Since we're all chartered chapters of the national, you pay $68 for a annual membership, and then you in signing up you would say, I want to be, I live in Orange County and I want to associate with the Orange County chapter. Um, and you just put that down on your membership form, which is basically online, but you say, I want to be associated with that chapter. Um, you go on to their roster. Now, the local chapters, we get $10 um, of that $68 goes to the chapter. So
Okay.
um, the chapters may charge a little more if they have other types of events that they want to have, like the LA people, since they are heavily involved with track events. If you want to be involved in that, there's maybe a $10 or $15 additional fee, but it's really fairly nominal. Um, you Once you're a member of the national, you can uh, associate with any number of chapters if you want to. There's also a chapter in Coachella Valley in Desert. It's called Desert Alphas, and they're in Palm Desert, Palm Springs area. There's also uh, a chapter in Santa Barbara, the Central Coast chapter. So you can associate with them and be a secondary member there if you want, which really what that does is puts you on to their mailing list. You get all the information and any newsletters that they put out about events that are happening in that local area.
And I assume the same would hold true to other parts of the country. I'm sure there's chapters in Florida, and there's chapters in North Carolina and New Jersey, New York, and all those areas as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, there are multiple chapters in most states
Gotcha.
because of geographic, uh, just I guess disparity. We just chartered a new chapter in Utah. The Bonneville chapter
Hmm.
has just been formed. Um, Desert Alpha, which I just mentioned, was really formed out of people that go to the Palm Springs area for the winter, um, but they come from other areas. So we had a number of people that went down to or go down to the Palm Springs area from Portland and Seattle area. So they felt, well, we're spending a lot of time down here. Why don't we have a chapter? So we had a number of people who were in San Diego chapter and LA that also lived out there. So it helped them as well. Um,
Yeah.
so we're looking at possibly forming a chapter in the Las Vegas area, and it's really beginning to expand with the number of alphas that are hitting the road now too. So it's really we're seeing a resurgence, and it's very heartening for us.
Wow. Good. Good. Is the national association, the national club, do they have a national meeting once a year or once every couple of years that they kind of get everybody together at one designated place in the country or something?
Excuse me. Yes, we have a national convention. It goes way back to the time of the founding. Um, in order to do business, we had to the board of directors had to meet to be able to conduct business. as a nonprofit.
Mhm.
So they they decided that once a year they would get together um, at previously designated places. So once a year, wherever the well, let me back up. The way it is now, the chapters across the U.S. can make a bid to have the national convention in their area.
Mhm.
Um, and this year, as I mentioned, it's going to be in Colorado Springs. Hopefully, next year we will have the national convention here in San Diego, and then the following year potentially will be um, on the East Coast, possibly in the North Carolina area.
Gotcha.
Um, there in the recent past, it was in Nashville. It's been in Pittsburgh. Um, 2 years ago, yeah, 2 years ago it was in Pittsburgh, and then 2017 we held a joint convention with the Alfa Romeo Club of Canada. So we had in 2017, which was the 50th anniversary of the reveal of the Alfa Romeo Montreal um, in Montreal. So there was a large number of those cars that were invited, um, and we had a great convention there with a number of special cars.
Nice.
So yeah, we have it everywhere. I mean, across the U.S. and um, Olympia, Washington. That was a great convention. Great driving roads up there. Got to see areas like Mount St. Helens and Mount Rainier. We had great drives on those mountains.
Does the local chapters do they hold their own meetings where members go to these meetings? Are the meetings mandatory, or how does that all work?
It's never mandatory, but yes, each chapter has their own bylaws. So
Mhm.
um, San Diego, when we were a big chapter, we would meet once a month at a large community room where we would have presentations and we have talks. Sometimes we'd have a detailer come up and demo how to detail your car, or what's the best way to polish the wheels and things like that. Other times we'd have tech sessions where we'd have a specialist on Spica fuel injection, which is relatively narrow subject matter, but is of interest to a number of owners.
Yeah.
As time went on, we had fewer and fewer members, but we still try to get together. So here in San Diego, probably once a quarter, we have a social event. We'd have it a chili cook-off or Oktoberfest at one of the members' homes. We'd have just a beach party.
Mhm.
Uh, I know that Southern California has 3 concours a year, so they will all get together in one at one pre-designated spot and have all their show cars together. Um, Usually, it's a social event also, so you just get together, sit around and look at each other's cars, have some wine and cheese and beer, and talk about alphas. Um, there, each chapter has their own things. I know that um, the Alfa Romeo owners of Oregon, they have regular drives, but I mean they have 40 or 50 cars that will go out on a drive, and then um, Northwest chapter in Seattle, they have organized rallies, so they'll have contests. Um, you have a set of instructions, and you have to go out and find all of these landmarks or take pictures of your car in front of a specific sign. Um, So each chapter has their uh, own type of things, but it's always around getting the people together and enjoying the cars.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for clubs such as these, and mostly when you're talking of the alpha group, I can only imagine that one of the attractions would be organized spirited drives every so often, get a group of guys together, a group of folks together, I should say, and just, and go have some good, pre-planned drives, and at the end of the drive, arrive at a restaurant, eat something, and then call it a day. But part of it is the drive.
Absolutely. And even in the COVID times, we had people that were just um, really saying, we need to get out of the house. What
Yeah.
can we do? And we thought, well, the perfect thing to do is to take a drive.
Yeah.
You're in your own car, you meet in a parking lot, you can be socially distanced, you wave at everybody, say, okay,
Let's
um,
go.
let's go.
Yeah.
So everybody drives off onto the drive. Um, we wind up in an area. A couple of times here in San Diego, we would drive up a different route up to Julian. There are a couple of wineries up there that we know and have been to several times that have large parking areas and picnic grounds. And they say, yes, we got lots of room. You can come set up your own space. You can have your chairs and your tables. Everybody can be within the social parameters and still enjoy um, being together, um, enjoying the outside with your friends, and be safe.
Yeah.
And now that we're in the um, post lockdown times, we're still planning on having more of these things, but we now don't have to worry about um, who's been vaccinated, who hasn't. Um,
Right.
so we're just going to have more and more activities as groups.
Let me ask you, Lance, since you're pretty dialed in with the brand and what have you. I mean, what, in your opinion, what do you think is going to happen here in the States with the brand as we move forward? Do you think we're going to see? Do you think we're going to get the Julia G? What is it? GTAM, whatever it is. The super sporty spoilered car, the ones you see in, that are overseas. I mean, do you think they're going to continue pushing it into the States, or are we kind of on a tail end of this?
Um, that's a really good question. I Optimistically, I think um, they might succumb to the request. Now, when they first came out, of course, everybody said, yes, yes, please bring that car. That's
Sure.
the one that we wanted to have here. I think subjectively, though, it's really a fairly small population that really would be willing to pay for what they're going to have to ask for that. But I think there would be a market for it. Um, I mean, there are people that are willing to pay well into the six figures for cars that I want to say are kind of run of the mill, not specifically Alfas, but I mean there are Porsches and Lamborghinis that are pushing 150, $200,000 that they're making a lot of that they
Right.
can get here. So I don't know. I'm hoping that they will with the new um, administrative executives in Stellantis. Um, I their CEO is it said they're going to give the Alfa Romeo mark in general 10 years to prove themselves, which I think is more than what a lot of previous executives had said about the future of the mark. I mean, we've always wondered, when are they going to just pull the plug and say no more? Um, I think the enthusiasts around the world are going to try to keep them uh, producing cars. Now, what are they going to bring to the U.S. market? I think they've always underestimated what the market in the U.S. has really wanted. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think that they're going to start out bringing things like the rumored Tonale, which is the newer, smaller, um, compact SUV that's going to be a hybrid. That will be something that will make them some money and hopefully bring the more sporty cars as well. Um, I really hope that they do.
Yeah.
Uh, they, I'm sure that they severely underestimated the demand for the 4C. I mean, that was one that they didn't even know if they were going to be able to sell 500 cars in the U.S. And it turned out that they sold out rather quickly, and they are still in pretty high demand for those that are willing to pay for the money and put up with a car that is very purpose built. I mean,
Right.
it's not something that you would drive every day, but it is something that you would want to drive on weekends and take pride in ownership.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the 4C is, it's a beautiful little car. And like you said, I mean, it's not really, it's not a, sit in the traffic SUV kind of a car. Um, and it wasn't, um, I don't know how many of those did they bring to the States anyway? Do you recall?
Um, it was supposed to be 500 each year, um, with 500 spiders. Uh, I think they extended it in the later years, but there really weren't very many. They just kept bringing. Um, in the last few, they were commemorative, sort of special edition Spider 4Cs,
Mm-hmm.
but they weren't going to be making any more of them. Um,
And they
maybe, go ahead.
and they stopped completely making them now.
Yes,
Even in they don't make them at all. Then
they're
okay,
not
so they're
making them at
done.
all. Right.
Wow, it's too bad. It's a beautiful car.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Well, Lance, why don't you tell everybody what's the best way to get a hold of the club, how to get a hold of your San Diego chapter, and if they have any questions, what's the best way to get a hold of you if they
Sure.
want to?
Um, let's see. I think the best way to find out more about the national and the club is just to go to the website, which is uh, aroc-usa.org.
Okay.
Or if you're on Facebook, go to your Facebook group of Alfa Romeo Owners Club US. Um, the San Diego Club has arocsd.org. That is the basic World Wide Web, so it's just arocsd.org. You can get a hold of me directly at araknd at gmail.com. And that's arachnid, which really comes from when I used to drive Alpha Spiders.
Yeah, there you go.
Uh, and it just kind of stuck, so I just kept it.
Yeah.
Um, so that's araknd at gmail.com. Uh, I'm on all of the platforms. Um, I have a personal website, which is alwayslookingforanother.com.
Always looking for another. That's clever. Always looking for another.
ALFA. That's what we say.
Yeah, always looking for another. Right. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Well, Lance, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate you spending this time with me here and kind of going over this and talking all things Alfa and sharing the passion and the love of the brand and the mark and the cars and again, thank you and hopefully in the next couple of weekends we'll catch each other up at local shows like the what is it called? Secret Car Club?
Secret Car Club, right?
Right. Secret Car Club. Right.
Yeah.
Real good. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks. It's been a pleasure. And I'm always open to talking about Alfas and cars in general.
Perfect.
So it's been fun.
Thank you. All right, sir. Take it
Thanks.
easy. Thanks.
Bye-bye.